not a Lend-Lease stranger. How the A-20 Boston became a Soviet aviation legend. Hey everyone, before we dive into this incredible story, do me a quick favor. If you love deep dives into lesser-known World War II history, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon. This story is a wild ride, and your support helps us bring more hidden histories to light. And when you're done watching, I really want to hear from you in the comments. Did your grandfather or great-uncle ever serve in World War II? Maybe they flew, maybe they fought on the ground. Share their story. Let's make this history personal. Now, get comfortable. We're going back to the Eastern Front. A night over the front line. Not metal, but fate. Imagine the scene. A freezing winter night over the Eastern Front, somewhere in the dead of winter, 1943. The only sounds are the relentless wind and the deep-throated roar of twin engines. Inside the cockpit of an A-20 Boston bomber, the crew is silent, their breath fogging in the cold air. The pilot's hands are steady on the controls, his eyes scanning the inky blackness. Then a crackle in the headphones, target dead ahead. This isn't a story about cold, hard steel. It's a story about the bond between men and a machine that, against all odds, became one of their own. The main question we're exploring today is this. How did an American design bomber, built in California, become so deeply loved and effective in the Soviet Air Force that pilots considered it theirs? What was the secret behind this incredible partnership? Part 1. Birth of the Boston. An American design with a global war in mind. Chapter 1. The Douglas Factory, where legends were born. Our story begins not in the snows of Russia, but under the sunny skies of California in the late 1930s. While war raged in Europe, the engineers at the Douglas Aircraft Company were perfecting a new kind of war machine. Their philosophy was simple but powerful. An airplane must fly, not be constantly repaired. They focused on reliability, simplicity, and ease of maintenance above all else. The project, known internally as the DB-7, Douglas Bomber 7, was designed for export from the start. The engineers built an incredible modularity. Need a photo recon plane? Install cameras. A night fighter? Add radar. A gunship? Swap the nose. This inherent flexibility, baked into the plane's DNA, would later save countless Soviet crews. The A-20 wasn't just a bomber. It was a versatile platform waiting for a purpose. Chapter 2. Early Baptisms by Fire. Not in the USSR. The Boston's first taste of combat wasn't in the Soviet Union. It was in the skies of France and later with the British Royal Air Force. And frankly, its debut was underwhelming. The French, overwhelmed by the German blitzkrieg, had little time to master the new plane. The British found it useful as a night fighter and light bomber, but saw it as just another tool in the shed, not a beloved weapon. So why the lukewarm reception? The tactics and needs of the Western Front were different. The A-20 didn't quite fit the mold. Its defensive armament was considered weak against German fighters, and its potential wasn't fully realized. The irony is that the very qualities the British and French overlooked, ruggedness, reliability, and ease of flight, would make it a perfect match for the brutal, vast battlefields of the Eastern Front. Part 2. The Road to War. Lend-Lease and Perilous Journeys. Chapter 3. What was Lend-Lease, really? The deal of the century. Before our Boston could become a Soviet hero, it had to get there. This happened through President Franklin D. Roosevelt's Lend-Lease program, enacted on March 11, 1941. Let's be clear, this wasn't charity. It was a strategic masterstroke. Think of it this way. If a robber is breaking into your neighbor's house, you might hand them a shotgun and say, "Use this to stop him. If you survive, we'll figure out payment later." For the USSR, bled white by the German invasion, Lend-Lease was a lifeline. While Soviet factories were heroically moved east of the Urals, these American supplies, including around 3,400 A-20 aircraft, provided a critical stopgap. They made up about 4% of total Soviet production, but it was a vital 4%, especially in 1942 and 1943. Chapter 4. The Northern Convoys. The Run of Death. The most dramatic route for the Bostons was the Arctic convoys to ports like Murmansk and Arkhangelsk. This was arguably the most dangerous journey of World War II. German U-boats and aircraft lurked, turning the frigid Barents Sea into a graveyard. Imagine transport ships packed with disassembled aircraft in crates, running a gauntlet of ice and enemy fire. The story of Convoy PQ-17 is a testament to this horror. Based on faulty intelligence about the German battleship Tirpitz, the convoy's naval escort was ordered to withdraw, leaving the merchant ships defenseless. Of 35 ships, only 11 made it. Dozens of Bostons and other vital supplies were lost to the depths, along with the brave sailors who manned them. Every Boston that arrived in the USSR carried the invisible weight of that sacrifice. Chapter 5. The Other Arteries. Alaska-Siberia and the Persian Corridor. Safer, but much longer, routes are also used. The ALSIB, Alaska-Siberia, air route saw American and Soviet pilots flying the planes from Montana across Alaska over the Bering Strait and across thousands of miles of treacherous Siberian wilderness. The Persian Corridor involved ships sailing around Africa to Iran, where the planes were assembled under blistering desert heat and then driven or flown north. Each Boston had an epic journey behind it before it ever saw combat. Part 3. First Impressions. Meeting on Russian Soil. Chapter 6. Acceptance at the Airfield. American ingenuity meets Soviet field craft. When the crates were finally opened at Soviet airfields, the reaction was mixed. Soviet engineers admired the flawless quality and precision, but were wary of the complexity. The planes were immediately Russified. American radio sets were swapped for reliable Soviet models. Machine guns were changed to standard Soviet calibers to simplify ammunition supply. This wasn't disrespect, it was adaptation. The Boston was being turned from a perfect factory product into a hardened frontline soldier. Chapter 7. The Pilot's Verdict. From Skepticism to Trust. The first Soviet pilots to climb into the cockpit were in for a shock. After the cramped, cold cabins of Soviet bombers, the A-20 felt like a luxury car. It was spacious, the instrumentation was logical, and it had one magical feature: a reliable heater. In minus 40-degree temperatures, this wasn't a comfort. It was a combat asset. A warm pilot is an alert pilot. In the air, the Boston earned respect. It was stable, fast, and its twin engines provided a safety margin that single-engine planes lacked. But there was a deadly flaw, a blind spot to the rear and above. German fighters quickly learned to attack from this angle, leading to heavy initial losses. This was the moment of truth. Instead of rejecting the plane, Soviet mechanics and engineers, with incredible ingenuity, began field modifications, adding extra machine guns and armor plate. The Boston accepted these changes, and a bond was forged. Part 4. The Night Hunter. The Boston's Finest Hour. Chapter 8. The Art of the Night Bombing Run. The Boston found its true calling in the dark. Its speed, reliability, and stability made it a perfect night bomber. The tactic was sheer audacity. Crews would fly to the target at treetop level to avoid radar and searchlights. They'd pop up at the last second, drop their bombs with devastating accuracy, and then dive back down to the deck to escape. It was a game of cat and mouse where a single mistake meant death. Chapter 9. The Little B, the A-20G gunship. In 1943, a new version arrived, the A-20G. The elegant glass nose was replaced with a solid one packed with 4 or even 6 heavy machine guns, and sometimes 2 20mm cannons. Soviet pilots nicknamed it the Zhutchik, the Little B or Beetle. This transformed the plane from a bomber into a formidable ground attack aircraft. Glass-nose Bostons would lead the way as pathfinders. and the little bees would follow, unleashing a storm of fire on German trains, trucks, and ships. The partnership was devastatingly effective. Part 5. The Universal Soldier and the Human Bond. The Boston was incredibly versatile. It served as a photo reconnaissance plane, a torpedo bomber over the Baltic and Black Seas, and a naval mine layer. But behind every machine were the people. The crews, pilot, navigator, and radio operator/gunner, became a family, trusting their lives to each other and their aircraft. And on the ground, the mechanics, the Earth Angels, worked through the night in freezing conditions to keep the planes flying. Their unsung heroism made every mission possible. Part 6. Legacy. What remains? After the war, most Bostons were scrapped under the terms of Lend-Lease or replaced by jet aircraft. It's a tragic irony that today, only about 15 complete A-20 survive, and almost all are in museums in the United States and Europe, not in Russia where they earned their fame. But the real monument to the A-20 isn't made of metal. It's in the memories, the photographs, and the stories of the Soviet veterans who loved it. The Boston is a powerful symbol of how a tool, designed for one purpose, can become something entirely different in the hands of determined and courageous people. It was a bridge between nations at a time when such bridges were desperately needed. And that's the story of the A-20 Boston. From American factories to the frozen skies of the Eastern Front, it became an unlikely legend. If this story resonated with you, if you learned something new, please support the channel by subscribing and sharing this video. It truly makes a difference. But before you go, I have one last question for you, and it's the most important one. What's your family's World War II story? It doesn't have to be about aviation. Maybe your grandfather served in the Pacific, your great-aunt was a Rosie the Riveter, or your family has letters from the front. Share it in the comments below. Let's build a living memorial right here with our stories. Because history isn't just about dates and machines, it's about people. Thanks for watching.